This is Optimal Health Daily, episode 1784, The Hidden Victim of the Pandemic, Your Hips, by Emma Hogan of lesmills.com, and I'm Dr. Neil, your very own personal narrator. Happy Monday and a very happy 4th of July for those of us in the U.S., and welcome back to another week of Optimal Health Daily. This is where I read to you from some of the best health and fitness blogs on the web, kind of like an ongoing audiobook, and always with a bit of my commentary at the end. And with that, let's get right to today's post as we optimize your life. The Hidden Victim of the Pandemic, Your Hips, by Emma Hogan of lesmills.com. From your posture to your physical power and your emotional resilience, hips play a remarkable role in holding everything together. So, what makes your hips a hotspot for physical and emotional health? And what can you do to ensure they're in good shape? We constantly hear that core strength is fundamental to athletic performance, reducing injury risk, and living a healthy life. But you can't pin everything on your core. If your hips are not in good health, you'll soon know about it. Back pain, knee pain, shin splints, iliotibial or IT band syndrome, plantar fasciitis, and all sorts of other aches and pains often stem from your hips. It's the muscles around your hips that support your core and pelvis, creating a strong foundation for your limbs to move from. When these muscles, primarily the psoas, iliacus, and the gluteus maximus, are not in good shape, you don't have the strong foundation you need, meaning other parts of the body have to pick up the slack. When these other muscles do too much compensating, overuse or repetitive stress injuries can soon kick in. Quote, "Stretching and strengthening my hips helps me feel confident in any movement. I know I have much less likelihood of injuries." Kelly MacDonald. By strengthening the muscles around your hips, not only can you ease injury risk, but it also improves your athleticism. Building strong glute muscles and strengthening and stretching your hip flexors helps you transfer force through the upper and lower body, so you can move more powerfully. That means running faster, jumping higher, and performing better. Ask Bryce Hastings, physiotherapist and Les Mills head of research, about the most beneficial stretches. And he says, for many, focusing on your hip flexors is hard to beat. He explains, quote, "We only have 10 to 15 degrees of extension available at the hip, where the thigh moves behind the body, and we use all of this mobility every time we take a step. Compare this to the hamstrings, which normally allow 90 degrees of hip flexion, of which we only use around 30 degrees when we walk or run. Therefore, losing 10 degrees of hamstring length is generally okay, whereas losing 10 degrees of psoas length is a real problem. Any shortening of this muscle shunts movement that should occur at the hip up into the lower back during each step, and that's a disaster." End quote. If you have tight hips, you have less mobility, which can make even the simplest movements, like walking or pushing a stroller, painful. Tight hips can also lead to a tilted pelvis, which affects your posture, plus your head and neck alignment. Poor posture is linked to stress and depression, while neck alignment issues can lead to headaches. Post-pandemic hip health is more important than ever. While we know the perils of too much sitting, for many, pandemic-induced restrictions have meant we're spending more time than ever at home, working and sitting on our bottoms. A recent study identified prolonged sitting as one of the key causes of pain and discomfort caused by limited hip extension. Your hips are contracted whenever you're sitting, and your hip flexors, the large, powerful muscles at the front of the hip, are in a shortened position. In as little as 30 minutes, this tightening of the muscles can start being problematic. You experience a loss of elasticity in the muscles, and as you age, this can become more pronounced and the muscles become less pliable. Signs you need to stretch your hips. Personal trainer and Les Mills stretch creator Kelly MacDonald says, quote, "We know it's important to drink water, brush our teeth, and get 5+ a day to maintain our health. It's just as important to stretch, especially the hips as the center point of your body that take a lot of load daily." End quote. She adds that if you're dealing with any of the following situations, you will definitely benefit from stretching your hips. Sitting for any more than 4 hours a day. Lower back or knee pain. Any pinching or pain in your hips. A feeling of being restricted when you move. Or if you struggle to touch your toes? Are your hips holding your emotions? It's not just your physical body that benefits from strong hips. Your hip health can affect your emotional well-being too. While there is a fair bit of controversial and different thinking on this topic, research has shown that different emotions are linked to different areas of the body, and the hips are where some people hold a lot of emotional stress. With this in mind, the sun salutations, pelvic stretches, and hip opening postures you do in yoga may not only release physical tension, but ease mental tension as well. And of course, yoga isn't the only option. Lunges and squats are all beneficial for hip health, as is stretching. You just listened to the post titled, "The Hidden Victim of the Pandemic, Your Hips," by Emma Hogan of lesmills.com. We're here to optimize our health. Now, listening to these articles is important, but getting personalized help can be a game changer. In the past, it's been difficult to get a clear picture of what our bodies look like on the inside, or how to measure what choices are helping or hurting us. That's what Inside Tracker was designed to solve. Inside Tracker was founded in 2009 by leading scientists in aging, genetics, and biometrics from MIT, Tufts, and Harvard. Using their patented algorithm, Inside Tracker analyzes your body's data to provide you with a clear picture of what's going on inside you and to offer you science-backed recommendations for positive diet and lifestyle changes. Then, Inside Tracker tracks your progress every day to help you reach your performance goals and live a longer, healthier life. Now, for a limited time, you can get 25% off the entire Inside Tracker store. Go to insidetracker.com/OHD to get your discount code and to start using Inside Tracker today. That's insidetracker.com/OHD for 25% off the entire Inside Tracker store. Dr. Neal here for my commentary. I want to mention a bit more about that syndrome that today's author Emma mentioned, IT band syndrome, also known as iliotibial band syndrome. The IT band is found on both sides of the body and is that long tendon that starts at the top of your pelvic bone and ends down at the knee. Now, it doesn't run down the center of your legs, but instead on the sides. Now, what ends up happening is this tendon becomes too tight. Tendons are supposed to be like rubber bands, but if they get too tight, they can start rubbing up against our bones, which will cause irritation. Runners, especially long-distance runners, are especially likely to experience IT band syndrome. In fact, according to the Cleveland Clinic, IT band syndrome accounts for about 12% of running injuries. And rather than experiencing hip pain, which would seem to make sense with this type of condition, a common symptom is actually knee pain. And since we have an IT band in both legs, you can experience IT band syndrome in both legs at the same time, which could lead to pain in both knees at the same time. The great news is that 50 to 90% of people with hip problems related to IT band syndrome feel better after about 4 to 8 weeks of treatment. In fact, some studies have found that it can happen as fast as 2 to 6 weeks. So if you're experiencing hip or knee pain, it doesn't have to be permanent. Just be sure to get a workup from your healthcare provider so you can be sure that your symptoms are truly caused by IT band syndrome and not something else. All right, that'll do it for today's episode and the 4th of July episode. I hope you have a great start to your week and a wonderful holiday if you're in the US. And I'll be back here tomorrow as usual, where your optimal life awaits.